The fire had come without mercy, riding the wind like a living thing. By the time dawn broke, the town was no longer a place, was a memory scattered in ash and smoke. Charred beams lay where homes once stood, and the smell of burned wood and loss clung heavy in the air. Lucas stood at the edge of the ruins, his boots sinking into warm cinders. He had arrived late the night before, planning to trade supplies and sleep a few hours before moving on. He never expected to wake to screams, flames, and a sky glowing red. Now the hotel was gone, the stable was gone. Even the saloon's sign lay twisted and blackened in the dirt. He removed his hat, wiping soot from his brow, unsure why his chest felt so tight. He hadn't belonged to this town, but the destruction felt personal all the same. Scattered survivors moved through the wreckage, quiet and stunned. Some searched desperately through the rubble, calling out names that would never answer. Others sat motionless, staring at nothing. That was when Lucas saw her. Amy knelt beside the remains of a small wooden house near the edge of town. Her dress was torn and streaked with ash, her dark hair tied back in a loose knot. She lifted burned boards, one by one, setting them aside carefully, as if each piece mattered. Her hands shook, but she didn't stop. Lucas hesitated before approaching. "You shouldn't do that alone," he said gently. Amy looked up, startled, then studied his face. Her eyes were red, exhausted, but steady. "If I stop," she replied, "I won't start again." Without another word, Lucas joined her. They worked side by side, clearing debris and uncovering what little the fire had spared: a bent cooking pan, a cracked mirror, a scorched blanket. When Amy uncovered a small silver locket, blackened but intact, she pressed it to her chest. "My mother's," she whispered. "She died last year." Lucas swallowed. "I'm sorry." She nodded, accepting the words, then tucked the locket into her pocket and continued working. As the morning wore on, others drifted away, leaving the ruins behind. Lucas stayed. He shared his water with Amy, and when his stomach growled, she handed him a piece of hard bread she'd salvaged from a wagon. "You passing through?" she asked quietly. "I was," Lucas said. "Guess plans change." "They always do," Amy replied. By afternoon, the smoke thinned, revealing the full devastation. Yet, amid the wreckage, people began to gather, talking, planning, refusing to leave. Amy stood and surveyed the land where her home once stood. "I won't abandon it," she said. "Not like this." Lucas looked at her, surprised by the fire in her voice. "Then you won't be alone." She turned to him, studying him with a small, weary smile. "Thank you, Lucas. Right." He nodded. "Amy." As the sun dipped low, painting the ashes gold, Lucas felt something unexpected stir inside him. He had spent years drifting, never staying long enough to be hurt. But here, beside a woman who refused to give up, he felt the first spark of something new. The town was gone, but not the people. And maybe, just maybe, neither of them were as lost as they thought. Morning came with a brittle chill, the kind that crept into bones and refused to leave. Smoke still lingered over the ruins, thinner now, but heavy enough to remind everyone of what had been lost. Lucas woke on the hard ground near the riverbank, the sounds of quiet movement and low voices surrounding him. People were already awake, because grief, he was learning, did not allow for much rest. Amy was there too, handing out small portions of food from a wagon that had survived the fire. She moved with purpose, her back straight, despite the weight she carried. Lucas watched her for a moment before standing to help. Together, they worked through the day-clearing pathways, marking safe ground and gathering what supplies could still be used. The town no longer felt like chaos. It felt like something holding its breath, waiting to see if it would live again. Lucas learned more about Amy in small pieces. She had been born in this town, raised by parents who believed in hard work and honesty. Her father had died years ago, and her mother's passing the previous winter had left her alone in a house now turned to ash. "This place is all I've ever known," Amy said as they sorted salvaged lumber. Leaving would feel like losing them all over again. Lucas nodded, understanding more than he expected. He told her less about himself, only that he'd been moving west for years, taking odd jobs, never staying anywhere long. "Why keep moving?" she asked. He hesitated. "It's easier than watching things fall apart." That evening, a small gathering formed near a newly lit campfire. Someone played a battered harmonica, its tune soft and uncertain. Children leaned close to their parents, and for the first time since the fire, laughter flickered through the air. Amy sat beside Lucas, staring into the flames. "We'll have to rebuild," she said. "Not just buildings, trust, community." "You sound like a leader," Lucas said. She shook her head. "I just don't know how to quit." The next few days were relentless. Blisters formed, muscles ached, and tempers flared. Not everyone agreed on what should come next. Some wanted to leave, others argued over land, and fear crept in whenever the wind picked up. When a shouting match broke out near the ruins of the saloon, Lucas stepped in, calming the men before fists could fly. Amy watched from a distance, noting the way he spoke calmly, without pride or threat. That night, she approached him. "You don't act like a man with nothing to lose." Lucas gave a faint smile. "Maybe I'm just tired of running." As the days passed, tents gave way to rough shelters. A sense of rhythm returned: work in the morning, planning in the afternoon, shared meals at night. Lucas found himself looking for Amy, without meaning to, noticing how her presence steadied him. One evening, while repairing a broken wagon wheel, Lucas burned his hand on hot metal. Amy insisted on wrapping it, her touch careful and warm. "You didn't have to stay," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "But I wanted to." Their eyes met, and for a brief moment, the world felt quieter, less broken. As night settled in, Lucas lay awake, listening to the river flow steadily beside the camp. For years he'd believed staying meant pain. But here, among ashes and rebuilding hands, he felt something unfamiliar: hope. And hope, he realized, was far more dangerous than fire. The sound of hammers striking would echo across the valley, steady and determined. Where ashes once lay untouched, new lines were drawn in the dirt marks of walls, doorways, and streets reborn. The rebuilding had begun, and with it came a cautious optimism that settled into the hearts of those who stayed. Lucas worked from sunrise to sunset, hauling timber, setting posts, and lifting beams alongside men and women who had lost everything. His hands grew calloused, his muscles sore, but the labor gave him a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. For once, his work wasn't just for pay or survival, it was for something lasting. Amy oversaw much of the planning. She wasn't loud or forceful, but people listened when she spoke. She remembered who needed extra supplies, who had lost family, and who needed encouragement more than food. Lucas admired her quiet strength, the way she carried grief without letting it harden her heart. They often worked side by side on the same projects. When the first permanent structure, a combined storehouse and meeting hall, was raised, Lucas helped set the final support beam, while Amy held the plans steady. "Feels strange," she said, looking at the solid wooden frame. "Seeing something new stand where everything else fell." "Strange can be good," Lucas replied. As the walls went up, so did their bond. Over shared meals and late evenings, Lucas began to open up. He spoke of his brother, who had died years earlier after a failed cattle drive, of the family farm that followed soon after, of the guilt that had driven him to keep moving, afraid that staying meant failing again. Amy listened without interruption, her eyes kind and understanding. When he finished, she said simply, "You stayed here." The words stayed with him. One afternoon, as they gathered supplies near the river, Amy laughed for the first time since the fire. Really laughed after Lucas slipped in the mud and nearly fell. The sound caught him off guard, bright and genuine. "I forgot what that sounded like," she said, surprised by herself. Later that evening, dark clouds rolled in without warning. The wind picked up fast, bending trees and snapping loose canvas. Rain followed, heavy and sudden, forcing everyone to seek shelter. Lucas and Amy ran to the unfinished meeting hall, ducking inside just as thunder cracked overhead. Rain drummed against the roof beams. The air smelled of fresh wood and wet earth. A single lantern flickered between them, casting long shadows across the walls. "We're really doing this," Amy said quietly. "Rebuilding," Lucas nodded. "Because you refused to let it die." She turned to him. "You could have left, but I didn't." For a moment, neither spoke. The storm raged outside, but inside the hall, the silence felt gentle. Without fully realizing it, Lucas reached for Amy's hand. She stiffened for a heartbeat, then relaxed, her fingers tightening around his. They stood there, hand in hand, listening to the rain. No promises were spoken, no grand declarations made. Yet in that simple connection, Lucas felt something settle inside him, a sense of belonging he hadn't known he was searching for. When the storm passed, they stepped back into the open air. The town lay quiet, but standing. The future remained uncertain, but no longer empty. As Lucas walked back to camp that night, Amy's hand still warm in his memory. He knew one thing for certain: this place and this woman were becoming more than a stop along the way. The town's rebirth did not come without strain. As buildings took shape and order returned, old disagreements surfaced like stones beneath the soil. Landlines blurred by fire became sources of argument. Some believed leadership should return to the men who once held it. Others wanted change, fearing the past had failed them. Lucas felt the tension growing day by day. One afternoon, while helping frame a new home near the center of town, raised voices echoed across the clearing. Two men argued over a plot of land that had once separated their properties. The fire had erased the boundary, and neither would yield. Lucas stepped in, trying to calm them. "There's room enough for both of you," he said. "No sense tearing each other apart now." One of the men turned on him sharply. "And who asked you? You weren't even here before the fire." Words struck harder than Lucas expected. "I stayed," he replied quietly. "That don't make this your town," the man snapped. The argument eventually cooled, but the damage lingered. That night, Lucas sat alone near the river, the familiar urge to leave clawing at his chest. He had felt this before, when things grew complicated, when he risked caring too much. Amy found him there, as the moon rose. "I heard what happened," she said softly. "It's true," Lucas replied. "I don't belong here." She sat beside him. "Belonging isn't about history. It's about commitment." He shook his head. "I don't want to cause division." Amy turned to face him, her voice steady but fierce. "You didn't cause this. Fear did. And fear doesn't get to decide who stays." Still doubt lingered. Over the next few days, Lucas pulled back, focusing only on work. Amy noticed the distance immediately. During a town meeting, another dispute flared, this time over leadership. Voices rose, tempers followed. Amy stood and spoke before the argument could spiral. "This town burned," she said. "It took everything from us. If we start tearing each other down now, the fire wins." The crowd fell silent. She continued. "Some people here were born on this land. Others chose it when it mattered most. Both count." Her eyes found Lucas. Later that evening, he confronted her. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," she replied. "Because it's the truth." Emotion tightened his throat. "I was thinking of leaving." Amy didn't hide her pain. "Then you'd lose more than you already have." They stood under the stars, tension heavy between them. Finally, Lucas spoke. "I'm tired of running." "Then stay," she said simply. He reached for her hands, grounding himself in their warmth. "If I stay, it's for good." Amy's breath caught. "That's all I'd ever ask." The next morning, Lucas returned to work with renewed resolve. When another disagreement arose, he didn't step back. He helped mediate, reminding people of why they were rebuilding in the first place. That night, beneath a sky scattered with stars, Lucas walked Amy home. Outside her temporary shelter, he paused. "I don't know what the future holds," he said. She smiled softly. "None of us do." He leaned in, hesitant, but sure. Their first kiss was gentle, unhurried, born, not of passion, but of trust. When they parted, both knew something had changed. The ground beneath them had shifted, but this time it felt solid. Winter arrived slowly, creeping in with cold mornings and pale skies. By the time the first frost touched the ground, the town no longer looked like a place that had nearly vanished. New buildings stood where ruins once lay, rough but sturdy, built by hands that refused to surrender. Chimneys smoked again. Lamps glowed at night. Life had returned not as it was, but as it needed to be. Lucas stood outside a small house near the edge of town, brushing sawdust from his hands. It wasn't large, and it wasn't fancy, but it was solid. He had helped raise every beam, drive every nail. Amy had chosen the spot close enough to town to feel connected, far enough to hear the river at night. Amy stepped out onto the porch, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "You're going to wear a hole in that ground," she said with a smile. Lucas laughed, softly. "Just thinking." She joined him, leaning against the post. For a moment, they watched the town together, the people moving about, the children laughing, the proof that something beautiful could rise from devastation. "I used to think this place was cursed," Amy said. "After the fire, after everything I lost." Lucas glanced at her. "And now I think it was tested," she replied. "Just like us."